Alright guys, so my name is Rebecca Klingler, and today I'm going to be discussing some health concerns for my vulnerable population, which is individuals that are same-sex attracted. So this population is important to discuss because it is so widespread and diverse. People within this group are everywhere in the world. They are within every socioeconomic status, race, and age group. As healthcare providers, it is almost certain that we will care for a patient that is same-sex attracted at some point. Because of this, it is so important that we learn about this population so that we can be culturally competent enough to effectively care for patients within this group. Some of the health considerations within this group are that they have different sexual behaviors than heterosexual people, and that this population is often misunderstood by society, which leads to inequalities for these people. For this population, I found that in Ogden, only 0.2% of the population is gay. In Utah, 3.7% is, nationally 4.1% is, and I was unable to determine an international number because there hasn't been an official way to obtain this information yet. While Utah's percentage is not significantly lower than the US average, the percentage for Ogden is. And I believe that it is this way because Ogden is a very traditional and predominantly composed of people within the LDS Church. This church is generally not very supportive of LGBT people, and because of this, many people may either not live in this area or may not have vocalized their sexuality openly. I think that Utah's percentage is higher than Ogden's because there are other cities like Salt Lake that are becoming more progressive in their thinking over time. So for this population, I found the following social determinants of health. So they have a limited access to education, economic, and job opportunities. They don't have as much availability to community-based resources. They often don't have a good social support. They're often discriminated against. They also are often exposed to crime, and they also often fear their safety. So many of the social determinants of health for this population occur because this population is generally discriminated against. For example, these people are often bullied for their sexuality, sometimes even by their own family members, which can threaten the individual's personal safety as well as diminish their social support. These individuals are also usually not given as many educational, economic, and job opportunities as their heterosexual counterparts because of their sexuality. So then for this population, I had the following concerns. So they're often unable to access health insurance, housing, employment, get married, have an adoption, or retire due to legal discrimination within the US. They also are more prone to getting psychiatric disorders and committing suicide. They also are more likely to use tobacco, alcohol, and abuse other drugs. They also are more likely to get cancer, especially women. And gay men are also more likely to get HIV and other STDs. And the elderly especially can have a lack of social services and culturally competent providers when they get older. So when I was determining the root cause for this population, I used the following problem statement. So I said that LGBT people are at an increased risk for health problems compared to their heterosexual peers. And then I asked, why do they have this increased risk? And then I put because they're not socially accepted. Why are they not? And then because there are many governmental policies and societal beliefs that discriminate against this group. So after determining the root cause for this population, I thought it was interesting and also disheartening that other people that the individual in this group cannot even control as the root cause for their health disparities. We need to do something about this. So then I went on to explore Maslow's hierarchy of needs for a typical person in this population, and I discovered the following. So their physiological needs were met, but then their safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization needs were not met. So the anticipated functional level of this group would be physiological, and this is because they often don't feel safe because they get bullied and they can be a victim of violence. So their likely health outcome is fairly unfavorable because the first two levels of Maslow's are just important for basic survival, and if these are not able to be met, then the individual cannot fulfill their higher level needs, so they can't reach the love and belonging, they can't get self-esteem, It's just really sad that they only make it up to level 2. So then in this population, I found the following communicable diseases more prevalent. So I found that HIV is more prevalent as well as viral hepatitis. So I found that gay men within this population are 40 times more likely to have HIV than a heterosexual man. I also found that protected anal sex is 18 times more risky for HIV development than protected vaginal sex. I also found that gay or bisexual men on average have more sexual partners than a heterosexual man. This also makes this group more likely to develop STIs. In order to combat this, all sexually active individuals in this group should regularly be tested for STIs. This is especially important because the presence of an STI makes it easier for HIV to be spread. It is also important for this population to obtain hepatitis A and B vaccinations in order to stop the spread of these infections as well. So then as far as non-communicable diseases for this group, I found they're more likely to have psychiatric illnesses, they're more likely to commit suicide, they have more stress, they have more cancer, and they can become obese. So this group experiences more stress and is more likely to have psychiatric illnesses and even commit suicide because of the discrimination that they face. The homophobia and social stigma can have very severe consequences on the health of these people. I also found that studies suggest that some lesbian and bisexual women get less routine health care than other women, so they can miss things like breast, cervical, and ovarian cancer in early stages because they've had negative interactions with healthcare providers in the past, they have a low rate of health insurance, and they often fear discrimination. I also found that it is more likely that lesbian women will become overweight, and that is about 3 times more likely than a heterosexual woman. So I found this quote, and it talks about how youth are more likely to commit suicide if they are part of the LGBT community. So it says, a study of youth in grades 7 to 12 found that lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth were more than twice as likely to have attempted suicide as their heterosexual peers. Some risk factors are linked to being gay or bisexual in a hostile environment and the effects that this has on mental health. So I think that that's really important to look at, that this group is more than twice as likely to commit suicide. So that's important to know about this population. I also found a quote about bullying within this population. So it says, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning youth and those perceived as LGBTQ are at an increased risk of being bullied. Results from the 2017 Youth Risk Behavior Survey shows that nationwide, more U.S. high school students who self-identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual report having been bullied on school property and cyberbullied in the past year than their heterosexual peers. The study also showed that more LGBT students than heterosexual students reported not going to school because of safety concerns. So I also think it's really sad that this group is more likely to be bullied, and they sometimes don't even feel safe going to school because they're worried that they're not going to be safe. So I think that's also important to note for this group, that they often are at more of a risk for harm by others. And there's my references. Thank you so much for listening.